Hi everyone, it's Megan and Bronwyn, and this month to talk about the energy that is swirling around in the month of March and leading into April. And while it sounds like a doozy, it seems like everything about March has been on astrologers' radar for quite a bit of time. So we'll jump right into that and talk about how two planets are transiting, I believe, into different signs this month, and how we're just really on the cusp of making some pretty big astrological changes that are going to affect all of us energetically in different ways for big periods of times and in some pretty big ways. So always looking forward to hearing what Bronwyn has to share. So welcome everyone, and Bronwyn, look forward to hearing from you now.
It's always my goal to help you through these transits that are major in a way that is going to be growth oriented and bring out the positives in your chart and the positives of these transformative times. And although the sky is dramatic, it doesn't mean that it's always going to land in a dramatic way in our own personal charts. We can always see the drama unfolding on the world stage. Astrology helps us to get a timeline for some of that. Sometimes we know that life in the human family is always exciting and dramatic. And that when these outer planets, slow moving outer planets, Pluto and Saturn, that's who we're talking about, change signs, that they do mark turning points for the whole human family. How those turning points land in your own life may or may not be really dramatic, but they will be significant over time. So this is a month that we'll all look back on and say, wow, yeah, that the spring of 2023, I remember when this and that was happening in the world, and this was a turning point in my life, even though I may not have been fully aware of it at the time. So we can look at Saturn first. I want to spend some time talking about both of these planets, Saturn and Pluto, because when they change signs, it is a significant transition. So Saturn first, Saturn is an overall 30-year cycle. I think many people, even if they're not really familiar with astrology, they're familiar with the concept of the Saturn return, which we get every 30 years in our life. We experience that in our late 20s, early 30s, when Saturn comes around to where we were born. And that's usually a moment of meeting responsibility in life, sometimes for the first time. And then we get it again around age 60. I'm sitting on the threshold of my own second Saturn return. And these are like stress tests in our lives. So those are the big ones that we get once every 30 years. But for all of us, we get a little stress test around how responsible we are, how good we are at adulting, and where we need to set better boundaries or take greater responsibility in our lives every time Saturn changes signs, whether or not it's a return for you. So if you were born in 94, 95, or in 64, 65, you are right now heading into your Saturn return, because Saturn has just changed signs. So he changes signs every 2.5 years. So we did this 2.5 years ago, 2.5 years before. But this one is significant because you guys, if you've been following our new moon activations for a while, you know that I've been talking about Saturn a lot and about those ideas of constriction and adulting. And this is what Saturn is he's our difficult teacher in life who's also deeply compassionate. So he's that inner voice that can be the inner critic, but is also the part of us that encourages us to step up and be the strongest that we can be and take the greatest responsibility in our lives. And Saturn's been in his own signs, his home signs, for the last 5 years. So we have all been experiencing that call, let's say a call to maturity, and a little bit of extra friction and constriction in our lives for the last 5 or 6 years, especially in that early part when he was in Capricorn, which was manifested so literally in the world with the lockdown period of pandemic times, with Saturn in early Capricorn conjunct Pluto. But that's but one reflection of the work that we've all been doing with Saturn in those Saturn ruled times. So I'm sure that each of you can think of examples over the last 5 years where you really have had to face up to something that was difficult, or you faced extra challenging, sort of put on your big girl pants kinds of situations in your life that may have felt a little bit relentless, honestly. So now we're having Saturn moving out of his natural rulership and into another sign, Pisces, which has a completely different, not very Saturnian nature. So we have Saturn, that planet of endings, constriction, boundaries, structure, and adulting, moving into the sign that's kind of the opposite of all of that. The beautiful cosmic ocean where everything comes to dissolve, the opposite of boundaries. Sensitivity and deep mystical compassion, Pisces, the artist, the poet, the mystic. So it's a really interesting contradiction of energies that we'll be working with for the next 2.5 years with Saturn. So I think the way that lands in our own lives is, and Saturn went into Pisces now March 7th. So we've been living with this for just about a week, and we'll live with it for another 2.5 years. So already you may be feeling that there's places in your life where you felt a little bit of a loosening of that intense grip. And again, we're not going to name this as positive or negative. It can show up in all kinds of ways, but a loosening of that grip, a little bit of a quieting of the inner critic, a feeling like there's more space for the artistic and mystical aspects of the self. I've talked to so many people over the last month or two who are returning to an artistic practice or a dance practice. I've even seen things like just more people sharing poetry on their feeds, and we'll see more and more of that. Saturn in Pisces is a little bit more of a gentle Saturn. The shadow side of Saturn in Pisces is we all can all lose track of time a little bit more. We all, those of us who are working on our sobriety, need to double down, because Saturn in Pisces can allow us to loosen our boundaries a bit and lean towards that Piscean escapism. This can be good if you're in meditation or you're in artistic flow. It can be more challenging if you're working with addiction, as we all are on some level or another. So it's a time to, yes, lean into our artistry, lean into our mysticism. And it's also a time to pay even closer attention to our time management, because it all gets kind of flowy, and to be extra helpful to those parts of ourselves and to the people in our lives who may be struggling with depression or with addiction. So those are the times we're moving into with Saturn. So that's one of the big ones, whether it's a return or not, Saturn and Pisces, and we feel that qualitative difference. The other big one is even bigger. In some ways on a personal level, not so much, but on a transpersonal and social level, the ingress of Pluto into Aquarius is big. So we've just talked about how Saturn takes 30 years to move through the chart. Pluto takes 244 years to move through the chart. So we never will experience personally a Pluto return. It's not a thing. Those outer planets really talk to where we are in our generation, the big forces that are beyond us that we experience in our lives. So when Pluto changes signs, it's a big deal. It happens once every 15 to 20 years, depending on what sign he's in. And you will find that you're experiencing echoes now of what happened to you in 2008. If that was a really difficult time for you, you're not alone. It was a difficult time for many people. It doesn't mean that you'll experience the same difficulties now. It means that there will be some resolution or echo. What we hope, and Megan, what you and I always talk about, is this spiraling developmental process. So we hope that when we get to the end of that cycle that we began in 2008, we've learned something. Pluto wants us to compost the things that don't work and ultimately to transform. It's not always easy transformation, but his call is for us to transform. So how have you transformed from what began for you in 2008? It's a long period of time. That's a really potent chapter in our lives. And I'm sure each of you can remember something significant from that year. For some of you, maybe really significant endings and beginnings. And we do tend to see those when Pluto changes signs. So you will have an echo of that this year. This is next week, right with the new moon. That's why we're talking about it. Right with the new moon, Pluto changes signs.
March 24th, I think, right?
It's a big deal. And we see the reverberations whenever Pluto is also the planet of great wealth because he rules the underworld. So we always see stuff in the economy and the banking system when Pluto changes signs. Of course, we all remember what happened in 2008. I'm not saying that's happening again. That was Capricorn. So that's like the structures that we rely upon. Aquarius is more big picture tech stuff. So right on schedule, a tech bank collapses. Yeah, Pluto's moving into Aquarius. It's exactly what we could expect. There may be further reverberations of that kind, but I think economically, we're not going to see what we saw in 2008. We'll see a lot of volatility for a year or so, and then we'll see a new landscape. So I'm spending a lot of time these weeks reassuring my clients that it's not going to be a repetition economically of 2008, though it may be an echo. But there was something within you and within your life that crashed and transformed in 2008. And I think messy and transformative are really potent Pluto keywords. It's like, it's the no mud, no lotus thing. Like when Pluto is having a significant transit in your chart or changing signs as he is now, we're in that muck. And it can be uncomfortable, challenging, psychologically rigorous to be in there. But we know that something, not always, but often, something beautiful will grow from that. But now we're moving into Aquarius. It's more about view. It's about service and about view. So Pluto into Aquarius, we're going to be seeing a bigger picture somewhere in our lives, that just the vision of that will be transformative to us. Seeing things in a way that we've never seen them before, as far as power structures, kind of getting a perspective on things where you finally get to back up and see the whole picture that you've been staring at very close for the last 15 years. And that is the piece that's going to be transformative.
But I wanted to ask is the area that this big transformative, moment happened, at all affected by where, Pisces is in our chart or something?
It's your Pisces house and your Aquarius house. So if you have enough familiarity with your chart, you can do that. And I will share a graphic that allows you to figure that out according to your rising sign. And that's like the most rudimentary way that we can start to look at how transits affect us. Because as the planets move through the living sky, they speak to different areas of our chart. Our natal chart stays the same. It's a beautiful preserved moment in time, the moment we took our first breath. And then the planets in the heavens continue to move. And as they move, they wake up different parts of our natal potential, because we don't live our whole chart at the same time. That's what the planets, as they continue to move, do for us. They help us to grow as they wake up different parts of our chart. So this is a big wake-up call, big wake-up call for your Pisces placements and your Aquarius placements. Okay. We're starting a new chapter now, and there's an opportunity to build out from the losses that we experienced then, and to kind of, some losses just can never be completely healed, but there comes a point where we're able to move on and rebuild resilience and rebuild hope in the world. And I think that's the beautiful opportunity when Pluto changes signs. We can really say that was a tough chapter and it's done. It's absolutely done. And I'm starting something fresh and new now. And this is the thing with Pluto, like Pluto does kill things. Like he comes along and then, that house is gone, or that business is gone. And we move on and we move on. I don't necessarily subscribe to that theory that everything makes you stronger and better. I think sometimes things impact us in ways that we have to rebuild from because they impact our resilience.
That whole intersection of where transformation is preceded by death or destruction or something is that, really uncomfortable place to sit. And yet when you get some distance between it and some healing, behind you after you've gone through that phase or that stage or that process, you realize that there is an inevitable and almost like, tenderly beautiful in some ways.
Yeah.
You use the word composting later on or earlier. I think that that's, the nature of life. And we would wish we could, jump right over the destruction or the difficult parts, but they're baked into the equation.
Yeah. And I think this highlights one of the key differences between Saturn and Pluto. Because
Okay.
Saturn really, we experience Saturn going around our charts a few times in our life. We can take personal responsibility for those movements, and we can see where we are responsible. Saturn shows us the places where we impact our own lives for better or worse, and where we can change things by taking responsibility. Pluto sits in that generational place where Pluto in the chart reflects the experiences that we have as a result of the time into which we are born, the things that we absolutely cannot control as much as we would like to, and the places where those larger societal and structural forces impact us for good or ill in ways that it can cover the whole range of being devastating, unfair, to being positive and a gift. It's that whole range of the way we're impacted by things that we can't control. And the way that we come to terms with Saturn is really different than how we come to terms with Pluto. We come to terms with Saturn, that's a conversation between us and ourselves. What does my inner authority say? It's hard, it's a stretch to live up to your Saturn, but you can do it because that it's within your boundaries, you can control it. Okay. Coming to terms with Pluto stuff, you can't control it. It's something that came from the outside that was an uncontrollably large force in your life that impacted you personally, but that you can take all the responsibility in the world and it won't change that. It's those big things. So the way we deal with that psychologically is really different than the way we deal with Saturn psychologically. There's an element of surrender. There's, I think, really potent work to be done around what is my responsibility and what's not, because psychologically we try to take responsibility even for the things we can't control, because that's just how the human psyche works, right? So there's a conversation we can all have with ourselves as this Pluto chapter closes about regrets and about what could I have done different, and all those questions that we ask ourselves when an uncontrollable force comes into our lives. I think about myself and the loss of that business and how I can still go back and feel regret. And if I made this choice at this time, but it collapsed because the housing market collapsed and people stopped building luxury homes and there was no market for what I was selling anymore. Yeah. I could not control that, no matter how good a business person I was or how I changed my marketing. It just wasn't happening.
Yeah. Bronwyn, if I were going to parlay what you're talking about into yoga terminology, to me, what I'm hearing is this idea that we're all come into this incarnation with personal karma. Karma means action. It's not good or bad. It's just action, but we're also living within collective karma or collective the reverberation of past actions of generations or eons of time. In yoga, also the word yugas would show up here. And there are these extended periods of time that carry an energy with them that have magnificent influence and force on how we can and can't live our lives. And so I'm hearing all of these correlations, and it's amazing.
That's it exactly. It's personal and collective karma. And that concept of the yugas gets us into that idea of the function of those outer planets and those longer periods of time that are longer than a lifetime, that it's beyond us. Yeah. And yet we're participating in it. We are experiencing it.
It's a lot to think about. And it's like, all of us should just walk gently through the next little while and just embrace everything that comes and keep that message, first and foremost in our minds that this is all in service to, it's all grist for the mill, as one of my favorite teachers, Ram Dass, says. So let's embrace it. And I just so appreciate these times each and every month to take this pause and to look at all the energies we're swimming in and the ways it's expressing itself in different people and in their charts. So, well, thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you.
Katie and Bronwyn, thanks as always. And we'll see you in April now. Okay.